Hi, this is Mike. Thanks for taking the time to tune in to this week's show. Before we get to this week's show, though, I want to share with you three different things. First of all, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this show. Whether you're new or you've been with us from the beginning, I really appreciate you taking the time to not just tune in, but then to apply the stuff and hopefully enhance your financial future. That's ultimately my goal. My goal here is just to provide some free content to help you navigate financial decisions, intentionally build wealth, enhance your financial future so that you can ultimately retire with confidence. So again, thank you for taking the time to invest in your financial future. I greatly appreciate it. Second of all, I'd like to announce that essentially August 1st marks our 1-year anniversary of doing this show. So we started August 2nd or August 1st of last year, and by God's grace, we've done a show from then till now. And I like to make the end of July show a little bit different. What I like to do essentially is a question and answer show. Essentially an opportunity to ask me anything. So whether it's things about money, things about finance, things about planning or business, or personal stuff, things you'd like to know about me and Mrs. Beautiful, we'd love to take the opportunity to help address your specific questions. If you'd like to have your question considered, you can send an email to mike@truewealth.show. mike@truewealth.show to have your question considered, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to answer it specifically for you. Thirdly, I'd like to convey that this year, by God's grace, marks Erica and I's 25th wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beautiful and I got married in 1999 in Hawaii, and we've been through a lot of things together, raising a family, seeing those kids kind of go off to college and launch and do their things. And so we're going to do a couple things this year to celebrate, and one of those things is to take an extended vacation in the month of July. Essentially, we're taking the vast majority of the time off to really just invest in our marriage, kind of double down, reconnect. I mean, we're pretty connected, but just in general, kind of enhance that a little bit more. So there won't be any new True Wealth shows in the month. There are, however, a lot of new people that are here. And so what I'm going to do throughout the month is essentially play replays. And those replays are going to be focused on money mindset. I cannot stress enough how much the way you think about money is applied to the way you handle money. Right? So Neapolitan Hill wrote a book about this in the 1920s or 30s, Think and Grow Rich. Earl Nightingale, if you ever heard of him, essentially gave the greatest secret talk, which is the idea that men become what they think about. Both of those are based upon the proverb of 23:7 that says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." Right? The way we think about money has a large impact on the way we handle money, which has a large impact on the money and the wealth and the things that we have. So throughout this month, we're going to be doing a handful of replays on money mindset. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this week's True Wealth Show replay. Hi, I'm Mike Potter, and I'd like to welcome you to the True Wealth Financial Show, a show dedicated to providing you the information and inspiration to navigate financial decisions, intentionally build wealth, and retire with confidence. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can find more information and resources on our website at truewealth.show. And now, let's get on to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the True Wealth Show. Thanks so much for taking the time to tune in. I am so glad you're here. I want to continue our conversation talking about money mindset. So in last week's episode, we talked about how money beliefs are important because really with money or really any other topic, money beliefs or beliefs drive actions. Those actions then provide outcomes. Those outcomes then support evidence which either contradicts or supports that belief. If the belief is supported, it becomes that much stronger, or if it's contradicted, the belief has to be reevaluated. And the reality is that it's the beliefs that we have complete control over. You might think you have complete control over your actions, but you don't. There could be obstacles, limitations, barriers that prevent you. The outcomes might or may not be in your control. The evidence certainly is not in your control, but the beliefs are. In fact, it's the only aspect of the whole cycle that you have complete control over. No one can tell you or force you to believe a certain way. And so that then begs the question, okay, if beliefs are so important, of all the beliefs out there, which is the best belief that you can have? And I heard someone say one time, the best belief that you can have is that beliefs can change. And that is really very much true. The best belief that you can have is that your beliefs can change over time. And your beliefs on money can change over time. So I'll give you a couple examples just of how some of my beliefs have changed over time. Some funny, some personal, some just money related. I used to believe that deviled eggs were disgusting. Right? They smelled kind of weird. They looked kind of weird. They felt kind of weird. I was just like, no, I didn't. As a kid, I just did not like them. But I really like them now. Right? That belief has changed. I used to have a belief that possessions or things that you had derived your value or your status. I used to think that spending money was way more fun than savings or investing. I used to believe that if I didn't achieve a goal that I set, then I failed. I used to believe, so it's kind of funny, in 8th grade, I think I was in 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, right around there, we had a pep rally, conference, assembly, or whatever, and it was all geared towards around the election. I think it was the idea of trying to get young people involved with elections. So at the time, 1992, you might remember George Herschel Walker Bush. So Bush 1 was running against Bill Clinton, governor from Arkansas, and kind of the establishment vice the young guy kind of thing, if you will. And so we did this voting thing, and we cast our votes for who we thought would be the best president. And I thought at that time that Bill Clinton would be an excellent president. I had no idea why. I didn't know what their issues were. I didn't know their stances are. I probably didn't even know where Arkansas was at the time. But I just thought, hey, go with the young guy, right? Our beliefs change over time. I used to believe that 40 was old. Do you remember being in your 20s? Right? When you're in your early 20s or late teens, man, you think 40, you're like over the hill. That's your parents' age or plus. Right? Now I believe it's really just halftime. And there's a whole second half that you have, and generally it's a little bit better. I used to believe that insurance was an expense to be minimized, right? Don't pay extra insurance. You want to minimize that as much as you can. And these are just some beliefs that I had over time. But the reality is that beliefs can change, and that's what I'm trying to illustrate there. Beliefs can change. Now, there's only really two reasons why a belief would change. One is we're trying to avoid pain. We're experiencing pain, we're in pain, we're going to experience pain, and we want to get out of that, or we want to avoid that. The other one is pleasure. Right? We want to experience pleasure. We want to have pleasure. We want to attain pleasure. Right? It's a drive to pleasure or a pull from pain. Now, the reality is it can be both over time. It doesn't have to be just one or the other. If you've listened to our backstory of our financial journey, it started with pain. I was in a really bad spot and I didn't want to be there anymore. And so we started changing. But it evolved over time to really have pleasure. We get to experience things. We've got to do things. We've got to have things. And so it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be a combination of both, which is why it's important to have a really compelling vision of what you want the future to have, which we'll talk about in a future episode. So one of the books that I've recently read this past year was this by Dr. John Deloney. It was Own Your Past, Change Your Future. And it really helped me out with a couple of things that I want to talk to you about today when it comes to the idea of belief change. So in the book, Dr. John Deloney talks about stories and how stories impact our lives. And really he talks about 3 types of stories in that book. The first one is stories from society, right? The larger society or culture in which we live. So some examples might be that as Americans, we believe that freedom is a good thing, right? That's something that's kind of universal that Americans believe in. Generally, we believe that the power belongs to the people, right? The Declaration of People, we the people, right? We believe in certain laws. There are certain things that a society should do and certain things that a society shouldn't do, like speed limits, right? Speed limits are a great thing. Drive on the right side of the road. It's a great thing. If you've ever been to some foreign countries where people just drive all over no matter what side of the road they drive on the sidewalks, you'll come back to America and appreciate that people drive on the right side of the road. But not all societies are the same, right? So some societies don't value freedom. They don't believe in power to the people. They don't have certain laws. Like in Germany, there's parts of the Autobahn that has no speed limit, as an example. Right? So different societies have different things. And the society that you grow up in and the culture that you grow up in shapes your beliefs. Right? So he talks about stories from society. He also talks about stories from your family, right? So if you think about your family and the roles that take place in your childhood family and maybe in your family now and the scripts that go along with that. So examples might be, right, the oldest, the firstborn. The firstborn is supposed to be the responsible one. They're, they want to help out the most and they want to, are asked to do a whole lot more. And then, so that's the oldest role. And then you have the baby, right? So the baby's the most coddled and the most spoiled and given the most, right? At least according to the other siblings. And then you have the ones in the middle, right? So the forgotten children, the ones that, they're not the first, they're not the last, they're just there. All right, mom might play a certain role, or dad might play a certain role, or a grandparent or aunt or uncle, right? These roles and these scripts that take place shape your beliefs to some degree, many, many years later. So, family gets together, a family reunion, and everybody's 40, 50, 60s-year-old. Sometimes they revert back to those initial family childhood scripts, just like that. It just happens because it's ingrained. And then Dr. John Loney talks about the last story. So he talks about stories of society, stories from family, and then he talks about stories from self. And of the three of them, it's the stories that we tell ourselves that are the most powerful for two reasons. Number one, you trust yourself the most. You might not trust yourself explicitly, but you would trust yourself the most. So if somebody tells you something external to you, you then have to evaluate, do you believe that to be so? Is that true in your mind? But something you tell yourself, it's automatically true. It doesn't have to be evaluated because you're telling yourself it. So therefore, it must be true because you wouldn't lie to yourself. The second reason that the stories from yourself are the most important is because they get repeated the most. Something that happens, you believe a story and then you repeat it and you repeat it. And the frequency of it, varies obviously, but the more you repeat a story, the more ingrained that story becomes and the more powerful it is to shape your beliefs. And the reality is that stories are nothing more than the takeaways from an event. An event occurs, and then there's the meaning that we associate with that event. It might be true, it might not be true. It's just our perspective of what took place. So I'll give you two examples. One personal one, and then one, the one you maybe have experienced. So a couple years ago, I think I told you in our story that Erica was in the Navy Reserves, and 2017, 2018, somewhere right around there, she got kind of mobilized. She got a deployment. She got kind of popped for a deployment. And so that was an event. So Erica had to leave us for about 10 months or so, go do some training, go do a deployment, and then she would come back. And so that was an event. That was something that took place. And then based upon that event, some of my kids, for example, they kind of felt abandoned. They felt like mom left them, right? Because she had to leave for, 10 months or so. That's how they took that event. That's the meaning that they associate with it. My association was that I'm a bad husband. I didn't do a good job of providing my wife. My wife has to leave us to go do this thing because I didn't provide well enough for us, years gone by. That was the meaning that I drew from that event. Erica's meaning was, hey, I've been in the reserves all this time. My number just got called, and so it's just something I have to do. right? That was her kind of takeaway. I mean, she didn't like it, but that's just the reality of it. So one event took place. Erica got orders to go to do a mobilization, and 3 different people took 3 different meanings from the same event. Well, which one's true? Well, it's up to us to decide what's true. Maybe you've experienced this in your past, or you will in your future. You're walking down the hall and you pass your boss, and your boss makes eye contact with you and then looks down, and you kind of walk by and doesn't acknowledge you, doesn't say hi to you, right? So that's an event. You pass your boss in the hallway. Well, what's the meaning associated with that? You might think, oh, my boss is a jerk. He or she doesn't like me. They don't value me. He doesn't even recognize me, won't even say hi to me. Right? That's a meaning. And that could be true. Boss could be a jerk. But maybe the boss has something on their mind and they're musing on a problem or deep in thought about something. They just come out of a meeting and they're trying to process something, and they just are looking down. Or maybe they just got some really, really bad news about something that's going to take place, and they don't want to transfer that onto you, right? So, you're trying to read motives and intent of somebody, and the reality is that person has, maybe they didn't even see you. Maybe just because they made eye contact with you, but they weren't conscious of who it was, and they just kind of walked on past you, right? So my point is that there's an event, and then there's meanings to those events. And my guess is that you have stories, because we all do, about money that you've inherited from society, that you've inherited from your family, and that you've told yourself over time. So some examples you may be inherited from, or you've heard of from society, right? That wealth inequality is unjust. We need to, change the wealth inequality in our society. Maybe you've heard this: everybody needs to pay their fair share of taxes or whatever. All the jobs are going overseas. Everything would be fine if it just wasn't for this inflation. Inflation's just destroying everything. Right? Maybe these are stories meaning that we've taken from events. Maybe you've heard some in your family. Maybe as a child you heard your mom and dad say, it's not in the budget. We can't afford that. All right, maybe you had your mom or your dad keep information away. So they'd say, hey, I'll buy this for you, but let's just keep it between us. Don't tell your mom or dad. Right? Or maybe you heard your dad say, never put money in the market. You can't trust the market. And for that matter, don't trust banks either. Keep your money safe in your own home. Right? Maybe you've heard, hey, do you think money grows on trees? I always kind of kick down that one. Well, technically, yeah, the paper does come from the tree. But, right, so these are stories from events that have taken place. Maybe dad lost some money in the market, or his parents lost money in the market in the Great Depression or something like that. And so therefore, you've been told never put money in the market. And so you have to evaluate, is that true or is that not true? Maybe some stories you tell yourself is, I'm just not good with money. I'm never going to get ahead. My retirement dream's never going to happen. Well, the reality is those stories that you tell yourself, those become the controlling narratives in your life. So if you tell yourself you're not good with money, guess what? You're not going to be good with money. If you tell yourself you're never going to get ahead, guess what? You're never going to get ahead, because you're going to self-sabotage, because that belief is driving your actions, which then drives the evidence, which reinforces. So you believe I'm never going to get ahead. You do things that's going to cause you to not get ahead. The outcome is you don't get ahead, which reinforces the evidence of you're not getting ahead. And then I told you, you're not going to get ahead. And it becomes stronger, and that loop just continues. This is why you have to break the cycle of beliefs, right? And the reality is you have to evaluate, are these beliefs that you have true? Because otherwise you just play them out. Zig Ziglar used to talk about a story about a newlywed that got married, husband and wife, and come Thanksgiving time, she made a ham. This new wife made a ham, and so they brought this ham home, and she basically chopped off the end of it and put it in the oven. And the husband's like, "What'd you do that for? What'd you cut off the end of the ham?" She goes, "You always cut off the ham." She goes, and he says, "Well, why?" And she goes, "Well, I don't know. My mom always did it." And so they get mom on the phone, and they say, "Hey, mom, why do you cut off the end of the ham? I got a new ham. I cut off the end. I put it in the oven. My husband wants to know why we did that." And I said, "I do it because you did it." And she says, well, I don't know why you did it. I don't even know why I did it. I did it because grandmom did it. So they call grandmom, get on the phone and say, hey, grandmom, I cut off the end of the ham I got here for Thanksgiving, and I did it because mom did it, and mom did it because you did it, so we're wondering why you did it. And grandmama says, well, I don't know why you two did it, but my pan was too short. Right? So what happens is we do things because we've inherited these stories that we never take the time to actually evaluate, and they become controlling narratives and they play out in our lives. So I want to give you 3 powerful beliefs that I believe that will enhance your money beliefs, or really any other area of life. All right, so belief number 1 I want you to try to have is that your beliefs can change. Change can occur for the better. Right? Your beliefs can change, your life can change, your money can change for the better. Proverbs 13:11 says, hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when desire comes, it's a tree of life. So hope deferred. So hope is kind of belief or faith or intent. All right, hope. The hope the things of the future can be better. When it's deferred, when it's put off, when you don't have it, it makes the heart sick. You have sadness, you have sorrow, you have depression. But when desire comes, it's a tree of life. Desire that things can be better. It's a life-giving force that can play out tremendously in your life. It will help you derive the pleasure you're trying to get or away from pain. But if you don't have the belief that it can get better, you just stay in that pain and you never achieve that pleasure. So belief number 2 that you should consider having, because it'll enhance your money beliefs, is the belief in personal accountability. All right, going back to Dr. John Deloney's book, says, own your past. Own your past. You don't have to like your past. You don't have to appreciate your past. You could have not enjoyed your past, but you have to own it. You have to recognize that you are where you are today, financially speaking, because of the things that you've done in your past. If you don't like where you are, it's because of the decisions, actions, choices, and behaviors you've done in your past. You are a sum of the total decisions you've made with your money in the past. And if you don't like what you're getting, you have to do something different. Doing the same thing and expecting different result is the definition of insanity. Right? If you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. So if you don't like it, you have to do things differently because you are where you are today because of the things you've done in the past. It's personal accountability. You have to believe in that. The third thing is you have to also believe in personal agency. So agency is the idea of where's the power come of change? What's driving your life? It can be an external thing or it can be internal. If it's external, then something else is driving your life. If it's internal, you believe that you have the power to change things. You have the power to decide what your future is going to be like. I've said many people this a lot of times, what the decisions you make in your household have more impact on your money than the decisions made in the White House. People think whatever takes place in the White House is going to change my life. And it might, but in a very, very small way. The decisions you make in your house are going to play out in a large way in your financial future. So you have to believe that you have the power and you can make the decisions to enhance your financial life. Because I hate to tell you, there's no Calvary coming. There's nobody going to come and save your life in any aspect, money or anything else. You have to do it. Now you say, okay, I believe that, that I can believe that things can be better, but I don't really get these two last things. Personal accountability, personal agency. I don't really believe in those. Well, let me ask you this. It's August 2023, summer 2023. If you could go back 10 years to summer of 2013, and you could redo the last 10 years, would you have done things differently in your financial life? Would you have done things different financially in the last 10 years? My guess is you would answer yes. I think we all would. Okay, well, what are some things that you would have done differently? Well, maybe I would have saved more. I would have paid more attention to my career, would have tried to make more. I was more intentional and diligent about my money, would have done a budget, would have communicated with my spouse, would have invested more, would have saved more, would have gotten out of debt, would have made this decision differently, would have taught my children more, right? Those are things that you would have done differently, that you had the power to do. Well, if you were to go back and redo them, that means you had the belief at the time to make a decision or not, and it means you had the power and the drive to do it, and you chose not to, or you chose to, which means you're responsible for it. And that's the idea. That illustration hopefully proves out that if you could go back 10 years ago, if you would have done things differently, that you could have. Now, you maybe said, well, I wish that President Obama would have did this, or President Trump would have did that. You have no control over that. But if you would have done things in your life that would have driven different outcomes, you have agency in your life. And you have to take personal accountability of where you are. So 3 powerful things that you can incorporate in your life will very, very much help you when it comes to money. The belief that change is possible for the better. The belief in personal accountability. The belief in personal agency. We're going to talk more and more about these things in terms of identity and money scripts in some future episodes. But I want to try to give you a micro action here that you can maybe do this week, won't take you a long time, is take a little bit of time and reflect upon the money stories that you've inherited and the money stories you've told yourself. So some money stories from society, maybe just one, a money story that you've inherited from your family, maybe just one, and a money story you tell yourself. Take some moment just to write that out. Write it on a piece of paper, and then just look at it and evaluate it. Is this true, and is this serving me? Is this true, and is this serving me? Is these beliefs that I had, these 3, helping my financial well-being, or is it hurting it? And I think that will help you reflect a little bit, and it'll help you, filter on and work on your beliefs, because beliefs drive actions, which derive outcomes, which cause evidence to reinforce that belief. I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out and connect with me. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. Thanks again for taking the time to watch or listen this week's episode of the True Wealth Financial Show. I encourage you to like, share, subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can go to www.truewealth.show for more information and resources. One final note as we wrap up today's show. I hope the information that you were provided was helpful and valuable, but I want to remind you that it's really for educational purposes only. Prior to making any decisions or taking any actions, I would strongly encourage you to talk to your legal, tax, estate, or financial advisor who's familiar with the circumstances of your situation. Until next time, I hope you have a great day.